This can be identified as the English contract law case in which the House of Lands strangely reasserted that agreement only exists when there is a clear after mirrored by a clear acceptance. According to the scenario that is mentioned in the video, it is clear and evident that we can find two parties which related to the above law case, which can be namely identified as Mr. Gibson and Manchester City Council, called as MCC. Basically, when we look more toward these parties, it explains about the Manchester City Council that it can be identified as a local government authority for Manchester. So thereby, when we relate to the law case that is depicted on the video, it states that the Manchester City Council adopts a policy of selling council houses to its occupant, which is run by a conservative party in 1979. Thereafter, MCC was a party of the law case which they invite Mr. Gibson to purchase the property and which clearly depicts that there was a contract between the two parties. Next, Mr. Gibson was one such tenant who was willing to purchase a council house from the Manchester City Council. Thereby, Mr. Gibson was a party to apply for details on the price of the house he was renting and mortgage terms using the printed form designated and supplies by the defendant for the purchase. Finally, we can come to conclusion that the parties involved in this law case are Manchester Council and Mr. Gibson.
Mr. Gibson leased and occupied a council house which the City Council owned in 1970, which would allow council house tenants to purchase the properties at favorable rates. They created an application form which tenants could fill out and provided them to the tenants. He filled out this form and returned to the council along with the administration fee and a request for an estimated price that he would have to pay. The treasurer of the council responded him to saying that maybe they are willing to sell the house for €2,725 minus 20% of it, which is €2,100. It also offered information on a corporate mortgage, including an application form, but cautioned Mr. Gibson that this wasn't a definitive offer of a loan. Mr. Gibson completed and sent the application form to the council, and he left the purchase price section blank, requesting the price to be reduced to reflect flows in the property's road. The council responded saying that the price has been agreed upon, and Mr. Gibson wrote back saying them to carry on with the purchase as per his application. The council did not reply to his letter but took the house off of the list of houses which they were responsible for. The council's policy on selling council houses altered in 1971 before an official sale had taken place. The council issued a statement declaring that they would only proceed with the council housing sales if contracts has been exchanged. Mr. Gibson claimed that there was a completed contract for the sale of houses and sued for specific performance of the agreement.
In all legal systems, a decision of a court decides the right of the parties to a legal action before it. A final judgment is usually necessary of a review of court decision by an appellate court, thus preventing a piecemeal and fragmentary appeal on interlocutory ruling. In Gibson versus Manchester City Council, the council advised through the mail that they may be willing to sell the house if he filled out and returned the enclosed form, which Gibson did. In the interim, however, the council changed its policy and so thus turned down the offer made by Gibson.
Held per Diplock J because the correspondence from the council included the term may be prepared to sell. It did not rise to the level of an offer to accepted or rejected. This is in the stark contrast to slightly earlier but very similar case for Storer versus Manchester City Council 1974, where a similar corresponding involved in the potential sale of property was deemed to be a valid offer to be accepted or rejected. As it included the specific price, it is luckily that the correspondence rose only to the level of the statement of intention. The slightly difference in the particular of the communication led to the distinctly different outcome.
The judgment. The case took a turning point at the Court of Appeal with a contradiction getting in the way initially. Lord Denning held that there was a contract. However, Lord Justice Geoffrey Lane dissented and stated that he would have held there was no contract. Therefore, the Manchester City Council appealed, seeing a chance of succession. By appeal, when this case was brought to the House of Lords, the House of Lords unanimously upheld the Council's appeal, which resulted with Mr. Gibson not getting his house. Lord Diplock stated that Lord Justice Geoffrey Lane had adopted the conventional approach of tracking back to the very start to see what transpired between the two parties. Especially, the documents which were relied on as constituting to a contract were taken into consideration, again as the importance of the case was built solely on the wording. He stated that it was quite impossible to construe this letter as a contractual offer capable of being converted into a legal enforceable open contract. The Council's letter stated, "The corporation may be prepared to sell the house to you, and that if you would like to make formal application to buy your council house, please complete the enclosed application form and return it to me as soon as possible." As there was no an offer available to be accepted, no contract had been formed, and by extension the council had not been in breach. Lord Diplock concluded, stating that he stands by Lord Justice Geoffrey Lane's judgment. Lord Fraser of Tully Belton, Lord Russell of Killowen, and Lord Keith of Kinkell also agreed that there should be no order for costs for the house.
When considering about the rationale for the decision made by the judges, it can be pointed out as follows. The judgment made by the judges was that Mr. Gibson didn't have a legally binding contract with the Manchester City Council. The reason for the following judgment was because the letter sent by the council was misread by Mr. Gibson. Lord Diplock further stated that the language which was used by the council expressed uncertainty about the offer they made to Mr. Gibson. Because of the phrase stated in the letter, "The corporation may be prepared to sell the house to you at the purchase price of £2,725 less 20%. The word "maybe" was the key basis for the council's letter expressing uncertainty and doubt about the offer they were making to Mr. Gibson.
The court held that the offer made by the council was actually not an offer because of the phrase used in the letter. This letter should not be regarded as a firm offer of a mortgage. If you would like to make formal application to buy your council house, please complete the enclosed application form and return it to me as soon as possible. It shows that the letter primarily explains the financial terms that the council may be willing to consider, and that no offer was ever made that could be accepted, and no contract had been formed. The judge thereby stated that the letter sent by the Manchester City Council is an invitation to treat, and that it cannot be considered as a legally binding contract. Therefore, it can be concluded that Mr. Gibson and Manchester City Council didn't have a binding contract.